to the Chief Executive to read the summons and attendance, please.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber in the Guildhall, Tuesday the 3rd of February at 4 o'clock. Alderman Cook.
Online.
Alderman Hussey. Alderman Carrigan.
Online, John.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Sure.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Hart.
And Sure.
Councillor Jackson.
Sure.
Councillor Leonard.
Sure.
Councillor McDade.
Here.
Councillor McGinley.
Sure.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Tierney.
Here.
Apologies from Councillor Nealis. Thank you, members.
Thank you, John. Members, item 3 is the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. And due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes, or for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website at derrystrabane.com. And item number 4, members, is declarations of interest, which can be declared now or as they arise throughout the meeting. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. Just a declaration of interest as a staff member at McGee for the first deputation. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Chair, could I declare an interest in item 14, which is the housing executive consultation around supporting people?
No worries. That'll be noted. Councillor Jackson.
Chair, can I declare an interest in item 6, the second deputation as an employee of the Western Health and Social Care Trust?
No worries, councillors. They will all be noted. And we'll move on now to our first deputation. And it is Stephen Kelly, Mary McIntyre, Gavin Colleen and Stephen Lindsay to update us on the annual progress of the McGee Task Force. You're all very welcome. Thank you for your attendance here today. We will have our normal procedure of 15-minute presentation with some questions and answers then from the floor. But Stephen, you're going to lead on the presentation, I believe, so I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Deputy Chair, Vice Chair, one or the other. And it's great to be back along with councillors again today. Mary McIntyre isn't quite made it at the moment, so I maybe just have her apologies for now, and if she does make it, then we'll continue on with her present. If somebody could help me with the slides. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, we were established as a task force back in March, April 2024, and it was to bring forward, as was written in the New Decade New Approach agreement at the time, a plan for expanding Ulster University's campus at McGee to realise a number of 10,000 students on the campus. Next slide, please. We were given and agreed a terms of reference, and that tells us about developing and overseeing an action plan to expand the campus and to include timescales and due regard for elements that would facilitate that successful expansion. Next slide, please. So from our perspective, we've really been seeing this as a practical challenge, and to try to deliver the plan as was presented, as requested by the Minister, and all the actions that we're trying to take are on that kind of practical basis. Next slide, please. So this is our third report. We published an interim report back within about 6 months of being appointed back in September 24, followed by an action plan. And the report we published on the 13th of January is an update, so 1 year on in terms of that plan, the actions that have taken place in terms of delivering against that plan, and some areas that we as a task force want to ensure get additional attention. Next slide, please. I suppose the first place to begin is that this is no longer just a new decade, new approach political agreement. It's also been transposed into Northern Ireland's programme for government, and there's 2 references in that programme for government. So now we're delivering not just an agreement between British and Irish governments and the parties at Stormont, but we're actually delivering an executive priority, and that's the basis on which we've been continuing our work. Next slide, please. Some highlights in the report. Enrolments are now at that record number of just over 6,500. From previous engagements with council, you'll recall that the university said that they believed that natural growth could get them to that 6,500 by 3 years' time from now. So we're ahead of schedule in terms of what the university said that natural growth would be. We've invested in a variety of areas, including the marketing. So applications to Ulster at Magee are up 21% in the year. For kind of a reference point, applications to Ulster University as a whole were up about 15%. So we're well ahead of the demand, creating that demand for places well beyond where the university themselves are, and higher education is across the north. We've secured new teaching facilities at Timber Quay. So those were secured, I think, just around the time I was last with council and colleagues were last with council. But we've already welcomed students onto that facility along Strand Road, along Queen's Quay. So from September of last year, there's a couple of hundred students there in the first phase. Eventually, that will lead up to about 650 students, I think, in total. Once the additional phases are completed, there'll be more students welcomed along Queen's Quay at Timber Quay from September again of this year. We also secured the sites that are required for the extension, the successful expansion of campus facilities. Derry City Council have been incredibly helpful in that, certainly with regards to the site along Queen's Quay that backs onto Strand Road as well. That's going through the necessary processes. And there's 2 bills currently waiting for planning consent with Derry City Council. We understand that they've passed through all their necessary statutory engagements in terms of those third-party consultees. So now they're with Derry City Council in terms of waiting planning approval for both the shared island building, which is on the campus itself, and also the dome, which is further on down the Northland Road. And if you look at the next slide, it gives you a sense of how the campus is beginning to shift and evolve. So each one of those pink dots are essentially those new facilities that we, as a task force, have said will be required. You can see that they're beginning to move, as we've said, down towards the river, down towards the city centre. The purple dots are essentially the existing buildings that will be refurbished, but the vast bulk of the development is moving towards the river and towards the city centre. Next slide, please. It takes people to get these things done, and I'm pleased to say that we now have teams established both at Ulster University, but also within the department who are based on campus. Those teams are focused specifically and solely on campus expansion and the broad project, the broad programme of activities that we've said that would be required, which includes, of course, the capital builds, but also the student accommodation, community engagement, social license, the marketing elements, private sector initiatives, etc., etc., etc. 2025 could have been dominated, I suppose, by one big large piece of work, which was the programme level business case. And it did take up a significant element of time, necessary process, unfortunately. But that business case has been completed, submitted to the department, and is going through its necessary diligence processes as part of the normal process of spending public money. That programme level business case, to refresh memories, basically means that the entire project, right out to 2032, all the elements, all the programme elements, both physical and other elements, a lot of the a lot of the preparatory work will have been done in that project, which means that we can do other projects at pace and with more agility without the need to go through multiple layers of business cases. We've also updated the KPMG report, which talks about the economic impact that this has on the city, on the cross-border region, and on in Northern Ireland. And members will have seen that there is a draft budget in the Northern Ireland Executive. In that budget is one piece of earmarked funding. So it's about 40 plus millions for what we call Medical School Max or School of Medicine Max. That money can't be spent on anything else. It has to be spent solely on that project because it's been earmarked in the budget. But in addition to that, the Minister for the Economy has bids in both in capital and revenue that we expect to see her draft budget, should the Executive agree its budget, and the physical capital and the programme elements should be funded for the next 3 years in terms of programme and the next 4 years in terms of capital once that budget becomes available. We've invested in a whole series of enabling actions. So there's a lot of concern, obviously, about wastewater infrastructure. The piece of work that's been done on the shared island building, particularly around wastewater infrastructure, actually resolves any wastewater infrastructure problems with not just that building, but actually all the city deal projects that are in and around that area of our city. It doesn't deal with the student accommodation wastewater issues. That's for those individual developers. This is for all the city deal and the McGee expansion projects. But we've also been dealing with issues around transportation. There is a sustained commitment and additional resources and people being deployed in terms of community engagement. The University Community Forum has been given a new role and a new task, and it's met 8 times last year. And I know that elected representatives sometimes play or attend those meetings as well. We are tasked with not just building out a campus and ensuring that we have students attending those, but to try to maximise the economic impact that this has on the city and on the region. And there's been a lot of work done, particularly from Gavin and Stephen here with us today, in terms of those private sector initiatives. And there's been investments already made, not just in terms of upscaling, but kind of inspiring additional thinking and thought around the emerging economy that the Northwest could capture. We're seeing investments beginning to emerge in terms of PBSA. So there's one in planning, there's one going through the PAD process as we speak, but there's also other smaller scales. And as a bit of context for that, the university currently have over 900 units in their own management. That'll be close to 1,000 come September of this year, with other investments that are taking place, not just by the university, but others. Come September of this year, the university will have about 300 units under their management in Belfast. So they've essentially three times the amount of accommodation units that they manage in Derry than they do in their other campus. Student accommodation is critical, not just in terms of ensuring that we hit the numbers that we've been tasked with hitting, but critical as well in terms of taking pressure off the communities that are in and around the university campus. So we commissioned a piece of work as part of our work that actually looked at how that should be stimulated. And there's an intervention which has been budgeted for and included in the programme level business case to try to bring forward more of that, certainly purpose-built student accommodation element. In terms of investment, about 36 million has been invested to date. So that's up to December 2025, and more money has been invested coming ahead in the next financial year. I have to say that all that we have asked for from the Minister and from the department and from the Executive to this point in time has been delivered. It's a very unusual experience, I'll give you that. But the ask that we've made of the Minister and her department, they have turned up, and I think that that's something to be applauded, and certainly we're very grateful for that. The next large project to land after the shared island building, it would be the School of Medicine Max. We can see that that's been earmarked additional funding in the draft executive budget. But there are concerns around the sustainability of higher education in total. So ensuring that not just Ulster, but Queen's and the other university colleges in Northern Ireland actually have a funding model which addresses the opportunity that exists, but also addresses the financial sustainability of those institutions. We've identified some critical issues. Obviously, funding certainty and sustainability come hand in hand. We should have news on that with the Minister's budget finally being presented in the next couple of months. The student accommodation issue is something that is not just a constraint in terms of expansion, but a massive concern, which I'm sure elected representatives get for people living in and around the campus, and we're trying to deal with that, but it does require intervention. We've concerns about the department. So the university in Derry is critical to the workforce planning of not just the Western Trust, but other trusts as well, and an alignment on their workforce planning and our expansion ambitions, and then ensuring that those people that are being taught at a level, or funded at a level that actually meets the cost of teaching is really important. So we have a big piece of work to resolve between the Department for Health and the university on ensuring that those things are aligned. And then just finally to say, like, this is a lot of money, but actually spread out over a number of years. And we're really confident. Next slide, please. We're actually really confident. We have been really confident as the years progressed and as we've reported that these issues are resolvable, but they will define the pace in which expansion takes place. That's not me coming today and warning that this could be delayed. We're basically flagging that there are commitments that we have asked for that need to be met in terms of budget and other areas. But all the evidence through the programme business case, through the refreshed KPMG report, et cetera, shows that this project stacks up from a practicalities and financial point of view. We've proven that there's demand for people to come and study in this area, and we have a plan in place to deliver that. Next slide, please. When we were last here, we stressed that the time for action really was now, and I'm really pleased to say that that challenge has actually been met head on by all parties, whether it's the university, the department, the executive, Derry City and Strabane District Council, or other partners. We have alignment here that is really important, and we continue, and we must continue to ensure and deliver on that kind of collective basis. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, you did, sorry. I didn't notice that it changed. I have said, I mean, the investment's 36 million so far and more, hopefully to come pretty soon. They are really, really significant, and they are to be welcomed, but we are at the most critical point. What happens in the next 3 months will define whether we're able to deliver this project as we've been tasked to do on time for this city and for this region. That comes down to making sure that the budget that we've requested is actually being delivered by not just the executive, but by the Economy Minister herself. Next slide, please. And finally, just to say that the last time we were with you, there was a really helpful motion came from the council. So I talked about the kind of chattering that was happening in other parts of the north around, well, does Derry really want it? You've been crying for university expansion for 60 years and now you're getting it and you're giving off about it, et cetera. And people were using that, and that was being fed back to us as a task force. Well, I was able to go from our last engagement with the council and say there's been unanimous support for this project. Whatever you think and whatever you believe is not true. People want this to happen. They want it to happen in a sustainable way and in a way that's sympathetic to the people in the city and the people that are in and around the campus. So I've come today with more asks, you'll be pleased to see, which is just to reinforce that unwavering support for expansion, to reinforce that message today. We do need agreement in the executive on the multi-year budget because that unlocks not just the School of Medicine, but what happens in terms of what we require from the Economy Minister. We have that programme level business case and that investment requirement in the Minister's budget, and we'd like to see those things delivered. You have a very practical role in terms of planning authority, but to continue to efficiently progress those planning applications. We know it's a legal process and they take the time that they require, but to encourage you to continue to efficiently progress those so that the appropriate accommodation projects, and I've highlighted the appropriate accommodation projects, are brought through. Accommodation in terms of teaching, but also residential accommodation for students. I have to say, in talking with the Students' Union involved in our task force, and there's no doubt about it that particularly in and around Freshers Week and the couple of weeks after that, there was particular stress being applied as people began to orientate themselves, arriving in the city and moving around the city. Not just students, but staff as well. But students were feeling unwelcome during that period. And we know that's not the Derry way, so we want to make sure that they actually feel welcomed when they're here. It certainly helps us with the marketing aim, which we've seen has proven successful in terms of the number of applications that have been made to study in Derry. And then finally, and I know as a resident, I took great interest in the special council meeting that you had last week, and the ambitions for this council area, both Derry and the Strabane area, are enormous, and that is very exciting as a resident of this area to actually see that happening. Not before time, I think we can all agree on that. But that's going to take that project that's presented. Oh, it's my phone ringing, Chair. That project that was presented and unanimously agreed on last week by council, and what we're trying to do as a task force, all of this needs to be joined up. So it's about encouraging that and maintaining that joined up approach. I think we're really good at that in this part of the world. We've really got ourselves and our act together, and it means that those that may be objecting to this part of the world getting its fair share and not before time, that they're not given the opportunity to say, well, we hear that you agree with all of this happening, but we need you to demonstrate that. So maintaining that joined up approach is something that we'd very much welcome as a McGee task force, which I'm sure you would welcome from us in terms of the delivery of the programme that the council presented last week. And Chair, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We have a number of indicated speakers. I'm going to take them in batches. I'm going to go to 3 and then we'll come back to Stephen for some answers. So the first batch is Councillor Farrell, Councillor Duffy and Councillor McDade. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to both Stevens and Gavin for coming today. I'd just like to welcome you on behalf of the SDLP. I think we've had a number of discussions since the formation of the task force, and I, for one, am really delighted with progress. I think the task force has led to a real focus on McGee, a real focus on progress at McGee, and that's really, really welcome because that's been missing for decades here in this city. What we've witnessed in the last year is record student numbers, a massive uplift in student applications. We've got the new teaching facility purchased at Timber Quay. We've got land acquisition along the riverfront to enable future expansion. We've got planning applications in the system for the Air Dome and the shared island teaching blocks. So that's all really, really fantastic news. When we last spoke, I think it was December 2024, there was 2 things that I raised as a concern. One was budget certainty, and the other was the student accommodation dilemma. In terms of budget certainty, and I know, Stephen, you've noted that on a number of occasions. I think in the interim report or the updated report, you said it was mission critical, and we would agree with you. I've had a look at the draft budget. It does mention the medical school. It does mention McGee expansion, but it's a draft. It hasn't been agreed. And I had a look at the funding requirements that were on the final report. So between now and 2030, there's 113 million in capital. Between now and 29, 25 million in enabling costs and 44 million for student places. So obviously, if that budget is not delivered in its entirety, things aren't going to progress at the speed we need them to progress at. So my question on that is there a feeling within the task force that the budget required is going to be delivered? And I do note that all the financial asks to date have been met, which is really, really encouraging. But we need certainty in terms of the funding to deliver the capital aspirations and the student places. And in terms of student accommodation, there's no point expanding McGee if the students don't live here. They need to live in the city. We need to reap the economic benefit of having more people here, spending money, etc. So we don't want students to commute here. We want to be able to house them. So I had read somewhere that there has a student accommodation or purpose-built accommodation task force established. So could you share some detail on that? So the questions asked the last time were about budget. That's still unknown. And the question about student accommodation, it's a massive risk to the whole expansion project. You know, if we can't accommodate the students, if we can't accommodate 10,000 students, this is not going to work. But on behalf of the SDLP, I want to thank everybody. The progress to date has been fantastic. The dedication displayed with the teams at UU, the teams at DFE, it's really, really amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and Stephen and Gavin, thank you for coming on today and providing us with an update. I was scribbling furiously while you were talking, Stephen, so hopefully I captured a lot of what you said. I'm going to say I am genuinely delighted with the progress that has been made by the task force, and particularly then that demonstration of commitment from the Minister, Kiva Archibald, and the Department for Economy overall, because I think that really demonstrates the focus that is on the university and on the university expansion, and the confidence that has then been placed in yourselves as the task force in bringing that forward. I think what we're finally seeing is what delivery actually looks like in terms of the university. And as a dairy woman, it is something that we have looked for so long, and it has taken generations to nearly get to this point, and for a minister to finally put that focus on it and have that commitment around funding and everything else. So I mean, like, the real investment there of over 36 million that has already been committed, that can't be sneezed at. We have the new teaching facilities at Timber Key, we have the sites acquired for our next steps of growth, and we have a clear plan then to get to 10,000 students. So I think it's the first time, certainly, that I have ever seen this clear plan and with it actually moving forward. That will deliver jobs, it will deliver for Derry and for the Northwest. And then to hear that we have reached those record numbers of 6,500 students, which is well ahead of the schedule that have been set out. And obviously the marketing plan around the university is working, and it being that place-based study with applications up 21%, because I thought that was a really significant number as well, that we are seeing people who want to come to Derry, who want to study here in the Northwest, and particularly want to study at McGee. I think that we do need to see this sustained multi-year budget. That is key to going forward. We have the student accommodation and delivery of the medical school max. This is all really transformational for our city. The money earmarked in the executive budget is really key, and it's good to see that has been in there and that the minister has given that commitment. And I have to say as well, it's not often you can say that everything that you've asked for off a minister has been agreed to and has been delivered. So that again shows the intent. I think, I mean, we see it in the gallery today, community engagement is absolutely key to it, the marketing of the university. I think the £40 million that we have in the budget at the minute, in the draft budget, is also a really significant figure. We did have that meeting last week around City Deal projects. We did talk about School of Medicine and how the ambitions around the School of Medicine have nearly exceeded where we were at the start, and that's why we have got the School of Medicine Max. And it's really good to see that the Minister has committed to that as well and put that in the budget. So hopefully we can see that delivered. I was in the School of Medicine yesterday, myself, and with the second year students, and you can feel the buzz around the university. You can feel the real feeling of a proper university that it for sometimes maybe lacked in Magee, but you can feel that now. There's a buzz around the campus. There's people about, and it definitely it's taken shape. So, what else did I have scribbled down? Oh, obviously the challenges. While we want to be really positive about this, we do know that there is challenges, and there's challenges around the infrastructure, transport, parking, accommodation, and particularly then student accommodation. And we do need that purpose-built student accommodation. And I was glad to see in your map that we still are focusing towards the river and towards the city centre. And I think that that has come very clearly from the community engagement piece. So it's good to see that that's all still part of the plan and moving forward. I think the health alignment is also a challenge, but it's something that we can definitely be working on. And I think then as well, Team Northwest is probably where we really need to be moving forward. We need to keep the focus on delivery, and we need to keep that joined up approach and that positivity around all our investment projects that are moving forward. It demonstrates to students, to families, and to communities that we are a city on the rise. We are Team Northwest, and what we can deliver if we work together and continue that. And I just want to again endorse the asks that you have in the paper, because I think that they are all reasonable asks. They are things that we have wanted for the delivery of the university for some time. So if we need a proposal in terms of the asks that you have in the paper, I am more than happy to propose those. So thank you, Stephen, for coming in again. A really positive paper, and I just look forward to continuing to see progress around the university. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy, and I'll come back to your proposal just when we're wrapping up here at the end. Councillor McDade.
You, Chair, and thank you, Stephen, for your presentation. I would agree with what has been said by the previous speakers. It's all very good news. And as someone that works in Magee, I can agree with what Sandra has said. There definitely is a buzz. It's a nice place to work. It's a good environment. It's good to see the focus on the medical school. But I'll talk about other students as well, because there's lots of other schools within Magee. And, you know, I think that we need to remember that it's a full community up there. We're at 6,500 students already, which is brilliant. It's brilliant to be ahead of schedule, but the infrastructure's not catching up. So if I go to work and I'm not there before 25 to 9, I don't get a parking space on campus during semester, full stop, I just won't. So if I was a student and my class didn't start until 1 o'clock, they're not going to get a parking space in on campus, off campus, on any of the student or any of the Magee parking. So where are they going to park? They're going to park on the road. Then they're going to get fines, they're going to get stickers, and they're going to annoy residents. Of course, that's going to annoy residents. It's just that, and I talked about it before, and I've talked about it over and over again. It's amazing to be there and to be getting to the 6,500 students already and aiming for the 10,000. It's not sustainable if we don't have all the infrastructure around it. Rory and Sandra have both talked about the accommodation and how critical that is, because I have students coming into me and they are travelling and they leave their home in Armagh at 6 a.m. to come down to be able to get parked on time, to be able to get into class for 9, to do a full day's class, and then they're not getting home to 6, 7 at night. Then they're expected to study, and then they're expected to go out in placement. Those people are not going to set down roots here. They're exhausted. They're not going to be a pipeline into our health service. They're not going to save the crisis in the health service in the Western Trust, because they're not going to stay in Derry. It's all that kind of, it's brilliant to see, and I love to see all the positive news coming out about Derry. I really think we need to focus, as well as the investment from the Department of Economy, which is amazing. Like, it really is amazing. There's other departments that need to be working together with us here, and infrastructure's a big one, because without the parking, without the park and ride, without the buses, without the trains, we're never going to solve this problem. I'm happy to second the proposal that Sandra has made around I think they're very simple. We're happy to endorse the asks. I would point out again, just one of the asks that you mentioned yourself, Stephen, specifically was around students feeling welcome. And I think that's something we need to remember, especially at the start of semester, because I remember sitting in here and everyone talking about people partying, people parking and giving out about everything else. And I think we have to remember that if we want our students to come here and stay here and love here the way that we all do, then we need to make sure that they feel welcome and they feel supported to be here as well. Best way to do that is have the infrastructure and the support around them. But it is good news. I'm really happy to see it, and I'm looking forward to the next update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Stephen, there's a few questions on there for you, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Chair. And I think as good public representatives do, kind of taking all of those contributions. Thanks for the support for the progress to date, absolutely, and for the asks that we've come with today. But councillors have drilled down to the kind of two most fundamental things. One is that, as Councillor Farrell started with, that budget certainty. We share the same concerns. That's why we published it. We were really clear that we're an independent task force. We're not employed by the department, nor the university, nor the executive, and we have our own minds on these things. All I can say, I can't sit here today and say the money's guaranteed. What I can say is that past performance kind of helps, I think, direct what the future potentially looks like. And we're really grateful that our asks have been met by the department to date and by the university and council and others to date. And we can take some confidence that that will continue. Certainly in conversations that have taken place with the Minister for Finance, with the Minister for the Economy, and the Minister for the Economy came to meet with the task force the day that we published our update report, and the commitments were all still there. But as Jerry Maguire says, show me the money. We're quickly approaching the 1st of April in the new financial year. But for the first time ever, the executive has a multi-year budget. So it's not just 1 year, show me the money, it's show me the money for 3 years in the revenue and 4 years in the capital, so that we can reach a point of no return on this project. So that's why we've been really clear that this is the most critical period. I want to come back to this council in a year's time or before and say, you've seen our 2025 report, wasn't it great? Here's our 2026 report. It's just as good or it's better. There's only one thing will make that happen, and that's that the money turns up come the 1st of April, plain and simple. So that's why we define this as the most critical moment in time. There's no certainty we're going to get it, but we've confidence that we're going to get it at this point. Student accommodation dilemma, I think it was described as. It's more than a dilemma. It's, as Councillor McDade said, this is mission critical to getting this done from a targets perspective, but also from a good relationships perspective. We don't want to do this just for the sake. We could have easily just come out and had a plan that said, we're there today to get to that number. That's what we need to do. Don't worry about anything else. But we decided that's not the approach we were going to take. We're trying to do this right, learn the lessons from other areas, etc., etc., etc. I have to say that the council's help in this has been really helpful, or council's actions in this have been really helpful for us. And that, like some sort of weirdo, I now sit and read through your planning committee reports. Sorry for your troubles. They're quite extensive papers, to say the least. But whenever we asked the minister to help council by approving that area plan piece, to give council the powers to begin to kind of take some sort of control over the HMO issue, I'm noticing lots and lots of more refusals. It's not scientific. It may be a piece of work that you'll do as a council yourselves. But I'm noticing more refusals in areas that already have HMOs, and seeing more applications from areas that don't. And I think that's exactly the type of motivation that the council were trying to give to either homeowners or investors or others to basically say HMOs are a really important part of our housing mix, no doubt about that, but they've got to be in the right areas now. Now, if those sustain through appeals, and I know council are doing and engaged in a piece of work maybe through your planning committee on those sorts of areas that we can look after. We're not legislators. But certainly I'm noticing, visibly noticing, not scientifically noticing, a shift in terms of where applications are coming in. And hopefully planning appeals and others will support the councillors' demand that actually it's not just investment in accommodation, it's got to be the right accommodation and in the right areas. And hopefully that comes through. We did do a report and commissioned a report last year that looked at the accommodation issue as a whole. So not just HMOs, where they are, where's the 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute walking distance and the opportunities that may exist for other applications in other areas to the campus, but also the issue of purpose-built student accommodation. It did note what we call a market failure. So to define what that means, the cost of construction, yet the available rent, there's a gap between both of those things. So in our program level business case and in our budgets, we've asked for an intervention there to stimulate that market, to ensure that that PBSA issue is accelerated and the stress is taken off, so that we continue to have affordable accommodation for students, but that the cost of construction is actually met for people to go and either to lenders or others to get the money to actually do the construction, to feel confident to build those places. I'll add to that, though, that students will want to live in a mix of environments. Like everybody in this room, I'm in Belfast frequently enough, and I see all of those big tower blocks going up. The university is only involved with one of those projects, and they're coming out of their contract on that in September of this year. A lot of those projects are beginning to fail economically. You can see your colleagues in council in Belfast have been asked for change of use, change in the short-term lets in terms of holiday lets, changed in terms of residential accommodation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's an oversupply and an under-demand in Belfast. We have the opposite. We have a bigger demand and an undersupply. So the opportunity exists here for us to make sure that that issue is addressed. On the infrastructure piece, it's a frustration for us all. I bumped into Councillor Harkin in a car park last week, and we talked about the Buncrana Road and the fact that basically my entire life we've been promised an extension, a widening of the Buncrana Road. It just takes so long for anything to get done, but we've tried to escalate the things that are relevant for our expansion program around transportation, around car parking, around wastewater infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a kind of working group now chaired by the Permanent Secretary in the Department for the Economy with the Permanent Secretary of the Department for Infrastructure to basically say, there's a lot of stuff happening in Derry and in the Northwest. We need you to lean in just as much as we're leaning in as a department to make sure that this stuff is done. And so far, those have been positive conversations. I mentioned the wastewater stuff around the investment that's been made in the shared island building, sorting out all the other city deal project elements. But there's much more to be done in terms of traffic management plan, car parking plan, residence parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking for those actions to come through at a much quicker pace and matching the pace that we're trying to drive in terms of this project. So yeah, we know this isn't just for the university or for the Department for the Economy, but there's asks here of the Department for Infrastructure, the Department for Health, Department for Communities, and other departments as well. And they all need to lean in because this is a executive program for government commitment. It's not a Department for Economy program for government commitment. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. And just before we go to...
Sorry, I did miss, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was asked about the PBSA task force. Maybe ask John to give an update on that because John's directly involved in it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stephen. So maybe just more widely on the PBSA. I mean, we've a lot of the infrastructure issues we also talked about last week in the special council meeting with regard to the wider city deal projects as well. So they are common. in terms of trying to find joined up solutions to all of these. But in terms of PBSA and that type of accommodation, unlike other cities on this island, the advantage we have, as we've said before in this chamber, is that we have the land, we have the sites, we have developers who wish to develop, we have planning policy that supports it, and the sites are in the right location. There are very few other that can say that. Most other cities don't have those elements. So the remaining piece is to ensure that the demand actually crystallizes and to ensure that any potential funding deficits can be addressed. So there has been a piece of work done on this, and I'm speaking both as a task force member now and as Council Chief Executive. And one of the groups that has been set up just last week is an expert, to quote the DFE themselves, an expert working group chaired by the Permanent Secretary of the Department for Economy in Snowdon to look at this PBSA student accommodation issue. We've been asked, I've been asked as a task force member and from a council perspective to join that working group. And its purpose is to look as to how we advance the delivery of sufficient, affordable, high quality student accommodation to meet the needs of the expanded McGee campus and to identify and mitigate barriers to delivery, including planning, particularly funding and the regulatory constraints. So that group met for the first time last Monday, the 26th. I unfortunately couldn't attend that particular meeting because we had a special council meeting on rates. It was primarily initially looking at the terms of reference of the group. How is it going to advance this issue of, in particular, PBSA student accommodation? Clearly, the discussion on HMOs that Stephen has touched on is the subject of many other conversations in this chamber through planning committee, and a significant paper on that will be coming forward tomorrow. That Karen's team is leading on. So there's a parallel piece of work there. With regard to enabling infrastructure, Stephen's mentioned the water and sewage issue that is clearly a constraint, but has hopefully been addressed with regard to the shared island block. And in looking at that issue, they've also looked at the other city deal projects and a couple of the McGee expansion projects. So there should not be a particular issue there. The key other infrastructure issue is parking that was mentioned by Councillor McDade, mentioned by residents, mentioned by all of us in terms of moving this forward. That's another interdependency that has been taken forward by DFI in terms of the car parking strategy and the transport plan for the city. Karen Phillips, Director of Environment and Regeneration, and myself have been working with DFI with regard to that. What does that look like? What's the shape of that? They have given an update presentation into actually this committee, and we're seeking a further update from DFI as soon as possible with regard to that. We have fed into that process, into that DFI process, all of the various developments that are taking place, all of the various elements of expansion of the McGee campus, all of the data that we have with regard to the existing on-street car parking sites that we own, those that will be removed as part of the developments as they go forward, the existing data on private car parking, and they are considering the totality of all of that in how we move forward. And we know there are other considerations with regard to residence parking schemes, etc., and enforcement of all of that. So a separate group, as Stephen has mentioned, because of the critical interdependency of this, has also been set up by the Permanent Secretary of DFE to include also senior representatives from DFI. So Council, I and you are very alive to these issues. These two separate groups are now being set up, not to look to quantify the problem, but to now start to quantify the solutions. What are they and how might they be taken forward? We're happy as Council to participate in both, and I'm happy from a council perspective to relay progress in those into this committee or any other relevant committees. So hopefully that gives you an update, members, in those two groups. They have the second group, the infrastructure group, is due to meet at the end of February, and the accommodation group met for the first time last week, just to consider its terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that update, and we'll go to Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome into the chamber today, Stephen. And that was an interesting conversation, and I was telling Stephen that a colleague of mine had their house bested in 1974 on the Buncrana Road on the basis of the road widening scheme, and moved to Cairn Hill, where I think you're from as well. And obviously we're still waiting on that. So there is, that's the timescales that we're dealing with here when it comes to Stormont's delivery. I think on the number of the 6,500 mark is a milestone, I think, for McGee. And I think that given that we were told for years and years and years it couldn't be done, in a couple of years it can be done. So that was a lot of nonsense, really, that we heard from officials, from government, that this would be impossible to deliver. And people students didn't want to come here. So I think that the evidence of that, I think, is very welcome and very, very positive. And I know the task force has done a lot of hard work to kind of push that forward in a very short timescale. I would be curious if you know who those people in government who are trying to use any bit of evidence to thwart and stop moving ahead with McGee. I don't know if you've got a list of people who were complaining about McGee or looking for any reason to pull the plug on funding. That would be useful to know. I think that there's a lot of challenges, right? And I'm glad to hear that there's a purpose-built student accommodation task force working group set up right now, because I read in the reports when the 6,500 student mark was reached that like accommodation could become a brake on the further development, and I don't think it should, and I don't think that, but I think that there's a danger if things aren't moved forward, that becomes an issue. It already is an issue, and I suppose it's already become an issue for many residents. So you mentioned there about market failure. One of the things that I've advocated and others have advocated from the very beginning of this process is that the Ulster University itself take responsibility for providing student accommodation to scale in appropriate areas. And their argument has been, that's the responsibility of the private sector. And I think that the private sector will build if there's profits and won't build if there isn't going to be profits. And that's a problem when you're trying to do something that requires a tremendous amount of planning. When it's not just when you're trying to deliver for a city on an economic basis, but also trying to make sure that residents aren't unnecessarily impacted. And then we've also said from the start as well, we're in the midst of a very severe housing crisis in Derry. So the loss of houses to HMOs actually compounds that crisis, because it's fewer houses even for private rental. And that's why we're seeing right now the rental costs in this city are going through the roof. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. And so I think that accommodation, I think that the way that teaching blocks are seen to be the responsibility of government and Ulster University, accommodation's the same if you're actually going to do it properly. So it's good that there's this working group set up, but it's on what basis and how are they thinking this through, and how quickly are we going to see action for large scale student accommodation in the right areas? That's the key. For me, in terms of the Ulster University seeking to be good neighbours, I think the university's been pushed back on the issuance of support for HMOs, in particular streets around McGee, which was welcome. It seems to me it's a bad idea to put 100 student units in the Rosemount factory where there is not a great amount of support for it. I think it's actually you look at Park Avenue right now and you look at the scale of congestion, and it's got a lot worse. But the idea that we're going to put 100 student units in the middle of Rosemount, in the middle of the area around McGee, where there's already a tremendous amount of concern by residents about congestion and everything else. So if that proposal was contained in the document today, I definitely wouldn't be supporting that, because I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think, from all the discussions that I've had with people in Rosemount and the greater area, that has any form of majority support. So I think that has to be looked at and really thought through by the university, which I believe is now backing this, and also by the task force. And I can go through at a later date the repercussions that are likely if that does actually happen. So I think that their accommodation's massive, but I think it can't be seen as a side issue. It's obviously should have been central from the very beginning, which is not your fault. So I'm not putting this on you, but I think it's it's about the university and how it thinks about expansion. There was a series of questions that some residents have raised, and some of them are probably already addressed, but I think that these are worth for the task force to think through in terms of, and just so that people feel like they're getting their questions on record. So there's a proposal and a question about how derelict commercial properties could be used for student housing in city centre locations. We're looking at places like Pump Street and Clarendon Bar. Obviously, if the task force gets behind and I'm sure it will, the proposal to change the cap from 30 to 10%, which if you're reading the council papers, you will see that that's coming up. Encouraging and advising developers not to build in inappropriate areas, which I think you're very, you become cognizant of, but that includes a whole series of ventures around Park Avenue, the centre of Rosemount. Obviously, deterring developers from seeking to overturn council decisions or using CLUDE to get around the policies that the council's actually put in place, which undermines the work of residents, undermines the work of councillors, and undermines the work of the council itself in terms of coming up with some of our objectives around HMO numbers. Anyway, those are some of the questions. I have a fuller thing here, and I'll forward that on the task force, but all the councillors, to my knowledge, have received that, but I just wanted to get some of them on record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. The next indicated speaker is Alderman Kerrigan online.
Thank you
Keith?
very much, Chair, for allowing me in. Much appreciated. And I do thank Stephen for giving the report, and very detailed report in the pack as well. To be fair, a lot of the issues you've already touched on, the successes you've touched on, and the challenges you've touched on, and you know what the situation is. And I don't want to rehash too much that the other members have already dealt with. It's great to see the McGee expanding. It's great to see the students up to 6,500. I mean, we thought the 10,000 figure was a big ask at the time, and now it's very achievable. Good to see the progress with medicine school, and as I say, there's praise for the work it's undertaken and for the just the formation, even the McGee expansion task force and the work it's undertaken. But as I say, you know what the situation is, and at least we are effectively all singing off the same hymn sheet in this regard. We know what the problems are, we know what the difficulty is, and it is those wider infrastructure challenges. I don't envy you, because I sit in the planning meetings, and I don't envy you sitting having to look at the planning meetings and read the reports as well, because I'm having to do that as a member of it, and it's obviously very interesting, as I will always say that to the planners, but it's just not something that that's not just light bedtime reading, that sort of way. So and I would be minded that there does seem to be, there's a lot of HMOs coming on. There's no point in me telling you any different. There is, and again, even in the meeting for tomorrow, there's HMOs on the agenda to make a decision by the planning committee, and it has been an issue. But you know that, and again, as Councillor McDade has touched on, the car parking. One of the big things is, in my eyes, you want to be a good neighbour to the residents, and you're taking on the chin. There's problems, and it's how they're dealt with. And it was good to see in the report even that working with the residents associations and seeing what can be done. So no, it's good to see there is progress. We know what the challenges are and those difficulties, and working with those government departments to see what can be done. And I did like your wee, which was in the pack, the sort of big headline, and it's not the viability of McGee, it's the pace of McGee, and it's just maybe. I don't want to be putting a handbrake on here, but is it the case that we may have to slacken off a wee bit with expansion until the infrastructures get caught up? I mean, we don't necessarily want that, but it's just the case of to try and that we can bring everything up together at the same speed. But no, other than that, as I say, I'm content with your report. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Final indicated speaker, Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you to Stephen and Gavin for the presentation. I suppose I'm one of the few who remembers the furore as an A-level student when it went to Coleraine, shall we say. But at the same time, I remember the promises that were made with regard to the city that didn't materialise, and they are now materialising, and that is to be welcomed. That said, one of the issues in university expansion, to my mind, was the issue of having our own students from Northern Ireland studying in Northern Ireland to therefore stay in Northern Ireland afterwards. So I'll come back to that particular point. And looking through the reported highlights, sustained commitment to community engagement, are the university content and the task force content that wide enough community engagement has been undertaken? I mean, some of us will have seen some concerns about some groups not being taken into consideration. The other one that I noticed in the highlights was student accommodation analysis complete, intervention budgeted. Could you give a bit more detail on what that term means, intervention budgeted? I'd be quite interested to know that. And then, I suppose on a macro level with regard to issues that have come up, 6,500 students towards the 10,000 target. Excellent. Are there any demographic figures available for that 6,500 with regard to, well, where have they come from? You know, are we succeeding in attracting homegrown students, shall we say? And also the demographics of CRN, PUL, community representation within that cadre of homegrown students being attracted to come to this part of the world. And a final aside one. I've heard some, and you've got enough on your plate, but I've heard some calls for the establishment of a veterinary school for Northern Ireland, and it's strange that Northern Ireland, you know, we're 3% of the population of the United Kingdom, feed 25% of the United Kingdom, that we don't have a veterinary school in Northern Ireland. There has been a suggestion of the Coleraine campus for that. Would that be something that McGee would welcome? Or would they have ambition to have a rural McGee campus to provide that sort of facility? Because a considerable area of this district council area is rural. And, you know, it's another way of expanding and ensuring that homegrown attraction. Or do you see, right, Colerane's the site, let them have it, or CAFRA or wherever, for that sort of development of student opportunity within Northern Ireland? And within that thinking, I'm always minded it's not a good job to have all your eggs in one basket. And I'm thinking in terms of all your eggs within a study basket, and the emphasis is on the medical school at the moment, and you know the wider expansion of subject availability within the university. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. And my apologies, I didn't actually see you signal, Councillor Jackson, so we'll take it now. That's a final speaker. Go ahead.
I thought it was a twitch every time I put my hand up. Your head looked away, but it's no, and again, just welcome everybody that's again under the chamber from the task force, and like, we know the caliber of people that have been appointed onto the task force, and that's deliberate. That's people that are able to make things happen. But most importantly, that I think it was yourself, Stephen, at the launch of one of the reports, is to make things sticky, because we've all experienced, and some longer than others, the historical neglect of the Northwest. And that was a political decision. There's no doubt about that. It needed a political decision and a political directive to address that. And we are seeing, through the expansion of the university, steps to redress that and rebalance the economy. There's no doubt about that. And this is evidenced from the progress of the task force. But we can't hold our breath every time there's an election to see if the progress that has been made is going to be reversed. Because we have, and we've experienced that, and this is our first time where we haven't seen, or the first time where we've seen, and I don't want to get into party politics, but it's the first time where we've seen a real commitment to the university expansion within this political mandate. And we can't afford to take our foot off the pedal. We can't afford to, and to use that terminology, we can't afford for anybody to be putting on brakes, handbrakes, or any type of the lesson of the momentum. So we need to continue the work of the task force. We need to continue on that pathway to the expansion. But again, we need to make it sticky. So I know, Stephen, in relation to your asks of our council, and they've been proposed and seconded, I've no doubt when we come to the end of this, it will get unanimous support. So that multi-year budget element of it gives us a degree of certainty, takes us into the next political mandate. But is there anything else we could be doing? And I'm thinking more in relation to the place-shaped marketing rules for us as a council. Those of us that are engaging with organisations that have a speciality for marketing this place. Is there other things that we could be doing to encourage students to be coming here, for this to be a destination of choice for university students? And again, create that momentum that makes the university expansion inevitable, regardless of any future minister that comes in and decides to pull the brake and reverse the progress that's been made. Because I suppose we have seen the task force, we've seen the minister, we've seen department officials, we've seen our council in solution mode. We're finding ways to progress. But we know that for every solution, there will be people that look for problems. It's just maybe a part of human nature. So we need to be continuous in relation to that solution mode and finding and showing that determination to ensure that we don't take a step backwards. So it's just to embed that within all structures of government, including council. And I'm delighted that our chief executive is playing an integral role within the task force, because again, that just gives that continuity and embeds our council's role and position in relation to that. But there's a few questions within that that hopefully, Stephen, you can provide a wee bit of clarity on.
Okay, Stephen, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and with your permission, I'm going to invite colleagues in as well, because they've, like myself, they're volunteers to this process, and they're, unlike me, they're much more expensive. So I want to make sure to get some value out of them before we leave today. But I'll kind of cover some of the questions and then maybe ask Gavin and Stephen to intervene as well, because I think particularly around the private sector interventions that we're doing, I think would be really interesting, because we all want more jobs and better jobs in this region. And there's been a lot of work done there, which I think needs articulated. Councillor Harkin, yeah, absolutely. We make it clear that the accommodation issue has the potential to be that handbrake. We're telling that in the context of what we need to be ensuring that the department and the university invest in to make sure that that handbrake doesn't exist. We're not reliant upon one or two small builders trying to pay over the odds for a house in a location and trying to use the planning system and going against both residents and elected officials' ambitions in that area. We know what we want to deliver, but what I need to reinforce is that this has got to be accommodation that students want to live in as well. I mentioned in their presentation that fair play to Ulster University, they've taken by the end of this year nearly 1,000 units under their management in the city that they control the behaviour of, etc., etc., etc. And there's obviously challenges with doing all of that, but that will be nearly 3 times as much as what they're involved in Belfast city centre or in Jordanstown, for that matter. So they are being responsible. Is it enough? No. Is the interventions that we're proposing going to get us to where we need to be? We fully expect that they will be. That includes the university developing its own student accommodation, which then they don't do for profit, but they do in terms of spinning that back into expanding their provision, in terms of courses, whatever the case may be. So we have a model here, and it's in our business case and it's in our budget ask that will bring some of that stuff forward. But, and I use the term deliberately in the presentation, appropriate accommodation. Appropriate means the right style, the right quality, but also the right locations. We're really, really keen to see that being brought through. You said, is it the responsibility of the university and not just the government? Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair to them, I think that they're stepping up to the mark, perhaps belatedly, in terms of the bigger expansion that we're currently trying to see delivered. But it's in their plans, not just in terms of Duncragan, but Strand Road and other locations as well. The residents, I'm happy for those all to be sent through to me in terms of other locations. We don't own anything. We don't deliver anything. My father was a builder, but you don't want me building anything for you, let me tell you. These hands are soft for a reason. But I think what will happen there is that we've identified this as the most critical moment. We're now at that natural growth ceiling, which was a phrase that was greatly offensive to this council, and rightly so. But when the university explained where natural growth would take them to, we're now at that point, 3 years ahead of when the university thought we would be because of the interventions. If the money turns up in April, then we break through that natural ceiling, and that's when we know we're really in business. And when we get to that point, the response will come from people who see the opportunity to develop out properties that they already own themselves, or seek to invest in areas and purchase and develop some of their own stuff. We are trying to, it's why we supported the council's HMO policy. We are trying to direct people away from communities that frankly have had enough and have had too many people trying to develop all their properties in that area. I did say earlier on that hopefully planning appeals and others accept the political response from this council in terms of what they would like to see them to do. That's a legal process that we can't engage in. I know there'd be a want or demand for us to say certain things and do certain things, but apart from anything else, John's on our task force, and that's the legal planning authority, and we don't need to either get in the way of some of that, either from a positive or indeed a negative outcome perspective. The university and ourselves are clear. We'll leave the planning stuff to the council and the councillors. That's their responsibility, and we need to maintain as a task force position that position, because we can't be seen being dragged into a planning appeal or otherwise and said, but you guys said that's not our role, because that would override both the legal but also the political direction that's been given in terms of some of these projects. But we are determined to, as you to use your phrase, to deter developers from certain areas. It's back to my earlier point about looking through those planning applications that are coming before the committee. I do see a shift. It may be something to do for council or for the committee to kind of look at it in terms of a kind of numbers and mapping it or whatever else. But as a outsider looking in, I'm seeing more refusals in the areas that we don't necessarily think the residents don't want any more HMOs, and more move towards other areas that were within reach of the campus. Alderman Kerrigan, in terms of growth, we're at the maximum capacity for the campus now. There won't be an additional jump in student numbers until 2029 because we don't have teaching facilities for them. So that does create an opportunity for that infrastructure to increase in that arrival of that infrastructure to increase in pace. So hopefully by the time we meet that moment in time, in terms of 2029, that additional infrastructure should be in and around us. Councillor Hussey, we were really surprised actually as a task force when the university brought forward a list of where they were receiving applications from. And back to Councillor McDade's point earlier on, they're coming from right across Northern Ireland, coming from areas in Northern Ireland that in my day job, I struggle to want to drive to from time to time because it's such a distance away and it's difficult to get to. So I can only imagine what it's like either in public transport or with limited income in terms of being able to afford to get to those locations. But we have students from every single town and townland in Northern Ireland attending the McGee campus. And that's great to see. And we absolutely want those people to stay here. We made it clear in our report that this isn't about doing this at the detriment of Coleraine, Belfast, Letterkenny, or anywhere else. This is about meeting that demographic uplift that runs out to 2029 and then making sure that this is actually a campus of choice for people to come and go, do you want, if you're doing law or medicine, or if you're doing paramedics, or you're doing business or AI or the liberal arts or music or cinema like my own son did, that's actually the campus you want to go and study in, and that's the city and that region that you want to go and stay in. That's definitely our ambition. In terms of the veterinary school, I think the university themselves is on the record saying they'll build a veterinary school, but only if the department pay for it, because it's actually incredibly, incredibly expensive. There are already programs at McGee that are funded below the cost of teaching. So money that's invested in some of the allied health subjects doesn't cover the cost of teaching. So where that location is, great to be in Derry. Do we mind it being in Coleraine? No. If we need a medical school in Northern Ireland, we've made it clear our job is to build this campus, ensure that it's an attractive option to meet that demographic uplift. And we've been committed that the new programs and the new additional students, and then we've seen that so far. So the additional students in terms of those Maslin places and others will be at Ulster University's campus in Derry, and that so far has been held strong. And then finally, in terms of making it stick, and I'll maybe pass some comments to other colleagues. Yeah, I mean, we have one shot at making this stick, which is we need all of those physical projects to have at least begun by the time the new 4-year capital budget expires, and then we're into a new budget period. If we get those physical projects started by those dates, there's no going back in terms of that expansion. That's why this budget is so critical, and why the suggestion that we've put in our presentation to you today in terms of potential motion is really important, that message comes out from the city. Other areas of support in council. Council are involved in our place-based marketing stuff. There's senior council officials help design that and are helping execute that. It may well be the council end up running whatever investments are, because we'll need a vehicle. We're not a constituted body as a task force, so we need someone to take that on. And then the final point, I wrote about this in the Derry Journal a while ago, and that in my own life, I try to find the one way to say yes and not 100 ways to say no. That's sometimes to my detriment. I think this is one of those times, and we've seen that so far at every level: political, administrative, university, city council, task force, and others. Let's find the one way to get to yes, rather than starting the day with let's find 100 ways to say no to something. And that's the only way, not just this project, but the wider regeneration ambitions as laid out in their special council meeting last week, will actually become delivered. Gavin, I'm going to hand to you first, but I thought specifically just on about this isn't just about a medical school. This is about so much more in terms of the academic and the skills need.
Yeah, sure, Stephen. Thanks for that. And if there's anything left to talk after Stephen's covered everything, but look, it's just to recognise the exceptional pace that's been achieved. To get to the 6,500 today, would have been hard to believe that 2 years ago when we started. But to a certain extent, this has been the easy part. There hasn't been any new buildings having to be built. The university's been able to move courses elsewhere. There hasn't been really any significant increase in Mazen. So this is the easy part. But the pace that we've achieved to date has to be maintained to get to the 10,000 by 2032. So there are a number of challenges going forward. Challenges around the budget, challenges around funding. The accommodation is a binding constraint. We can build the buildings and really increase the Mazen, but if we don't have a solution for the accommodation, students won't be able to come. And so everything now moves on to really it's executive decisions, and it's budget and funding along with policy changes, policy change around Mazen, and I suppose, Councillor Jackson, you're asked about where can we help. It's the parties, really, because this now goes to the executive and it's all parties together to support it. And that's really where the next stage of development will be, because any delays in planning or any delays in budget will mean that we won't hit the 2032 target. And it's, and it's all parties. The funding, for the increased Mazen, was going to cost, by the time we reach the 10,000, it's going to be a reoccurring cost of £38 million per year. We know that the executive don't have fiscal headroom to cover that, and we have to have a mature conversation around, student fees, which we've avoided up until now, because, if we don't get those extra 3,000 places that we need for McGee over and above the Mazen at the minute, those 3,000 places have been, as Councillor Hussey has mentioned, they've been taken up by universities outside of the province, and where people are paying 9,200, for those fees. So look, there needs to be a mature conversation between all the parties as to what we do to help to fund, those student places going forward, and working together collectively. It's been phenomenal to see the response from within the department. John and I would have been involved in previous business cases going to the department where you knew that there was no intention whatsoever of the economists ever wanting to do anything. We're now, the approach from the department is this is going to happen and we're going to do it. And the minister has said that she's ring fenced her spend and it's her #1 priority. That's still very, very clear. But it will move to the executive for the executive to make the decision, and it'll be for all the parties to support this, because there will be challenging times ahead, and we can't afford any delays. We'll push it back, and even from this council and from the planning approvals as well, those to go through as quickly as possible. The accommodation is needed, but it has to be done in conjunction with, our population of people that already live here. And that's really, really important. And your support within that would be greatly appreciated. It has been phenomenal to see, the courses that they have moved. There's been no drop in the student grades to come here, the willingness for people to want to come and to travel, to do those courses. So we know that if we put the right courses in McGee, people will want to come. And as we develop, and I'll move over on to Stephen, or pass on to Stephen now shortly, just on the public sector or the private sector approach, McGee offering, those AI courses, the courses of the future that makes this place attractive to other people. Because it's not just really about people within the province. We'd like to see people from, the mainland UK, people from the Republic of Ireland wanting to come and study in McGee because it's the place of choice. And that's what will really make this place, make up for the 50 or 60 years of stagnant growth that we have, to really accelerate things. And look, everything we all can do collectively together to help, like we're doing it as much as we can, but it moves now from the task force to the executive. to really drive this forward and to change those policies. And it's all the parties together doing it, and the student accommodation, the student fees will be a big number as to how we address that, because I know a number of parties have said they're opposed to any increase whatsoever in the student fees. In my mind, from sitting independently, I think it'll be hard to deliver that in the executive if we're not going to look at how we can, through student fees, and that could be through means testing or whatever way that we do, But the downside of it is young people leaving here and paying 9,200 to go to the UK and paying all the additional travelling costs. It is a bit of an oxymoron, So look, your continued help and support will be greatly appreciated. Stephen.
Yeah, just to come in behind Gavin on that, both he and Stephen have given me the last word, but they've said all the words that I would want to say as well. But look, I'm the Chamber of Commerce representative on the task force, and I just want to say to you that business in the Northwest is fully behind us. Everybody we talk to is really, really positive about it. So a couple of things. First of all, that cross-party narrative at executive level is really, really important. And we need to shift the debate a little bit on it. The debate has been Derry wins, everybody else loses. It's not about that. A strong Northwest, I think I'm on record as saying this, a strong Northwest is good for Northern Ireland, it's good for the island of Ireland. We're all in economic difficulties, particularly the public purse. So why wouldn't you grow the economy in this part of the world to help us pay our own way and do that? And so we have to challenge your party colleagues that are saying an investment in Derry is not any good for anywhere else. Everybody else is losing. We've got to change that narrative and do that, and we're certainly trying to do that. So that's a first thing. In terms of, that's what you can do, and that's what you can help us do. And the second thing is this joined up approach as well. You had your meeting last week. All these projects that are working have to work together to grow the economy. We have to try and optimize the impact of all this, because if we do that, we can create a momentum that no matter what they do in the executive, it doesn't matter, because we're developing our own area ourselves, and we've got all the levers there. We just have to make them happen. And I think as Councillor Duffy said about Team Northwest, that's absolutely right. And there's a cross-border aspect to that as well that we need to hear and talk about, and through the various structures that are there. The funding debate Gavin talks about isn't pie in the sky, and like my youngest guy's just started university as well, so I'm stuck as a parent in the middle of it all. But it's really telling that the student representatives that are on the task force are open to having the debate about fees. They know it has to change. They know that they have colleagues and friends that are heading to Dublin or heading across the water, and they're paying a lot more. They know it's not a debate that's unfair on students. It's a realistic debate, and if we're going to pay our way, we need to be open to having the debate. We mightn't agree with it, and we might decide, no, we can't do anything, but at least hear it out and debate it. Don't go to a fixed view that this is no good until you hear the arguments and hear the student voice on it as well. And then the final bit, which I'm supposed to be talking about, is what's the business aspect of this? And I think Councillor Hussey had talked about growth in the medical school and whatever. And look, there's been a lot of work to get to where we are. It's not been easy. It's been tough, but it's even harder now to get to the next stage. And this is where Team Northwest has to kick in. And this is where we have to, as Gavin said, do things that are relevant to get people here who wouldn't necessarily come here. And we need balanced campus growth, absolutely. But we need to be attractive to the businesses that are here at the minute and in the future. And as I say, they're behind it, and they're behind working with Northwest Regional College as well to try and move that pathway forward. But the sorts of things so we've worked with businesses, and the sort of things they're saying is, look, we need a gateway. Who do business contact in the university if they want something done? So we're going to create a gateway there, a single point of contact, and that will be linked into the innovation hub that you've already talked about. That's part of City Deal. So it makes sense to link that into the university and Northwest Regional College. We need to encourage our students that are here to become entrepreneurs of the future. It's with AI, as Gavin says, it's much easier to set up your own business. the aspects, the barriers to capital aren't there, the barriers to staff aren't there anymore. So therefore, we're pushing the idea of entrepreneurial bursaries. So instead of placement years, we could create some bursaries for students that want to take a year out and set up their own business. And that's the sort of thing that we're pushing through the task force. We're also talking about having our own at McGee dedicated innovation vouchers for businesses to be able to come to McGee whenever they have an idea and take things forward. And then the final thing probably that needs to be done is we need to be, and this is too technical, but at the minute, it's not attractive always when they have a business an idea to go to the university if they lose the intellectual property on it and the university take that. So that commercialisation piece has to be better. The university are engaged, businesses engaged, and I know the council's engaged. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour where we're at from a Chamber of Commerce and a business perspective. But thanks for all your support to date. Like, we've worked hard in the task force, but it hasn't worked just because of us. It's worked because of this Team Northwest approach, and just be open to the next 12 months and helping us as much as you can. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Gavin, for your comments. I think that brings us rightly to the proposal from Councillor Duffy. So it's there now. Just bear with us while we try and get it on the screen. Yes.
Chair, just quickly, I mean, I appreciate that you've lobbied the council today on the student fee issue, but the student union doesn't support a hike in the student fee. They've long campaigned for free education and for the abolition of student fees or tuition fees. And it would be a big debate because we've looked at the stats in this as well, and we know who will lose out. Working class people will lose out if university fees goes up. And I think it's wrong to tie university expansion in Derry to the need to raise student fees. The council, I'm pretty sure, has put through motions quite a few times opposing hikes in the tuition fees. So I just think that this is to make it seem as if we need to hike tuition fees in order to further expansions, just wrong. It doesn't actually need to happen. And I'm happy to have a debate with you or with the chamber at a different point in this, if you are ever interested in doing that.
You're not be having it now.
No, but can I just...
We have a number of guests who with another presentation.
But can I just finish on it? I didn't say the student union were supportive of this. What I said is the student union representatives in the task force are open to having a conversation on it. And that's all I'm asking you to do as well. So
we're not going to get on it now, Stephen. Very
just to answer it. So there's a financial investment required in terms of physical infrastructure and student fees and a whole pile of enabling infrastructure. The minister's made it clear that she's not touching university fees. We went, that's fine. The ball's in your court now, so you need to find the money within your budget. So that's the position we've taken on this, which is fine. It's up to the minister to finance this. And if that comes out of her core budget, then that comes out of the core budget.
Okay, thank you for that, Stephen. Members, I am conscious that we've got another deputation here waiting patiently in the public gallery, so I'm going to move straight to the proposal from Councillor Duffy, which has been seconded by Councillor McDade. I presume that everyone is going to be in support of it, unless I hear different. No. Okay, and that has been passed unanimously. I just want to thank all of our guests for coming and presenting such a very positive update on the work that's going on at the expansion of McGee. And from the proposal, you will see our council's ongoing support to the work that you're involved in. And we wish you all the best going forward, particularly over the next couple of months. Yeah. Because we know how important.
Bring us back.
We know how important that is. So members, if you can just bear with us while we have a quick change here at the top. We'll be back soon as. ready to go ahead and make your tea, but we're just going to crack on as quickly as we can. So item number 6 on the agenda is a deputation from representatives from the Northwest Development Office and the Western Health and Social Care Trust to give us a presentation on developments at Fort George. And I'm going to hand over now to Pauline Campbell, Director of the Northwest Development Office. Pauline.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody. Good to be here today to update members on Fort George. Maybe just to introduce ourselves, I'm Pauline Campbell, Director within DFC and part of the Northwest Development Office here in Derry. I also have Ian McQuitty here, part of DFC as well, and we have Wendy McLaughlin just up here as well from the Western Health and Social Care Trust. So just in terms of Fort George, obviously you will all be familiar with Fort George. You'll know it's a strategically important site for the city. And really, we'll try and walk through just in terms of where we are in the planning process, the key milestones and the broader vision for the site. So next slide, please. So this slide just really outlines Fort George. You'll all be familiar with it. You'll see Catalyst there, the white building on the top right, and also the smaller tally house on the top left there, the small red brick building. So as you can see, there's much there and much ambition for Fort George. And this is what we want to talk through today to provide an update on the outline planning application for the site. If you remember, we were here around May of last year. The focus of that discussion was on the Western Health and Social Care Trust full planning application. And just to give a wee bit of background on that again, so you'll see there on the top of that diagram, you'll see the white central building there. That is where the Western Health Hub is proposed to be located. To the left of that, you'll see the proposed multi-storey car park outlined there. And the full planning application for that proposal was submitted in July of last year. And where we want to focus our discussions today, however, is on the wider site development. So it will be more on the southern part of the site there, as you can see in the more coloured parts. And this will be part of our outline planning application. So just to talk through the timeframes and where we've come through in the past few months in particular. So in terms of the proposal for application notice, this was submitted on the 2nd of December 2025, and this initiated the formal pre-application process. The community consultation has been a key part of that process, with the public consultation events held on the 22nd and 23rd of January, and a consultation period running through to 19th of February. We anticipate submitting the full outline planning application in spring of 2026, subject to the completion of all consultation and technical inputs. And then, of course, the final decision timeline will be confirmed through the council. So maybe just if we move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here really just gives the description of the proposal of application notice. You will note that the description there is quite wide-ranging, and it's been kept wide-ranging on purpose for a reason in terms of providing a framework for a range of uses. So you'll all be familiar in terms of an outline planning application. We're not saying what the site is to be used for, but we want to keep the types of uses as wide as possible, such that it allows a future flexibility down the line. So in terms of what we've proposed broadly, we've talked there about office, residential, student accommodations mentioned there as well, and it was interesting. We were listening with interest the earlier update as well. Also hotel, leisure, retail, cafes, bars and restaurants. But ultimately it will be up to the market to decide the ultimate end uses that best serves the city. I think it's important for me to highlight as well that any images that you see here, they're all based on artist impressions. and you'll all be aware that outline planning really provides the broad principles for the site. And this is the key aspect in terms of, from the planning perspective, that will be important to guide future developers in terms of what's expected for the site. So maybe if we move to the next slide, please. And we're here now just in terms of the key principles. And these key principles shape the master plan or are the guiding principles, I suppose, for how we want Fort George to feel and to look like going forward. You will see that these principles centre on high quality design, sustainable development, improved connectivity, active travel, and ensuring the site integrates effectively into the wider city context. We want to see a strong placemaking focus on the site where people are welcome to use and benefit from the site, and a site where everybody is welcome. These principles support a coherent and deliverable vision for Fort George that aligns with both local needs and regional regeneration objectives. So I'm going to pass to Ian. Thank you.
Evening. I'm going to just try and give you a broad overview. Next slide, please. Sorry. A broad overview of the development of the site and where our design team have sort of developed their proposals. As you can see, and Pauline highlighted the bits that are actually on this slide shown as greyed out. You can see the health centre and the multi-storey car park and catalyst. The bits we're looking at are the 3 blocks at the bottom end of the site. You can see that among the 3 sites or the 3 blocks, we also have significant areas of public realm space that we'd like to design and develop to make that an accessible strategic area that people will want to come to. Transport and accessibility are key enablers for the success of the site, and we're engaging on a routine basis with our statutory partners both in DFI Roads and with TransLink to ensure that we can meet the planning conditions that will come with the development of the site. The redesign of the Pennyburn Roundabout is key, and Pennyburn Roundabout features in the full planning application that was made and not in this. So it was part of the health service application that was made in July. We're trying to create safer, more efficient traffic flows around the development. At the moment, the site is serviced by bus stops on the existing bus stops on the Strand Road that may be moved slightly as part of this application. But transport on the site or to the site is on the Strand Road. The infrastructure within the site has been made to enable buses to come onto the site. At this stage, there's no plans for buses to come onto the site, but the TransLink have indicated that they are willing to engage with us as the development progresses. The internal link roads create that coherent movement both for traffic into the site from the Pennyburn Roundabout side of the site out onto the Strand Road, and there's an internal roundabout that allows people to go back out via the Pennyburn Roundabout as well. As you can see, the green lines that are shown throughout the site, they are the intended pedestrian corridors that link both the health centre right through to the riverside, and the riverside is key in sort of linking right back to the key trail that's there existing. Next slide, please. Over the next 3 slides, we'll show artists' impressions of 3 of the key areas that we think will be the focus of the site. The first of those is the riverfront, which plays a vital role in connecting the city to the wider, or connecting the site to the wider city. It shows there the existing jetty that will be included into the overall development and how we best use that. The design team are working to create a vibrant, attractive riverside environment that encourages active travel and increases public use of the area, and it links through also to the Pennyburn Bridge, which is just right beside the site. It envisages that the riverfront will therefore play a key role in helping to define the overall identity of Fort George and what it becomes. Next slide, please. The area that we have at this stage in our design team have called the square. You can see in the small inset,
picture up the top. It's the area just at the riverside between the two front blocks. We've called it the square at this stage. There's no intention that that will be the name of these areas going forward. It's just to help us in the design proposals. The square is envisaged as a central gathering place and a key visual anchor for the rest of the development in the centre of that area. It provides clear sight lines right through from the Strand Road, and the view that you're looking at in that arse impression is from the riverside up towards the health centre at the top. It'll be important to create high quality public realm, ensuring that the area is attractive, welcoming, and the department will work with the public and private sector partners that will be developing the site to develop the public realm. It's envisaged that the square will include a feature building or a pavilion, which is the large structure shown on the left-hand side. But again, this will be determined by the market and what goes on the actual site. And active street frontages with commercial uses helping to animate the space. And then the next one, which is the park, and again, this is the area, this artist's impression is looking from the health centre back down towards the riverside, back down through the area we've just looked. The park character provides the green connector for the site and trying to introduce that environmental improvements. The artist's impression, as I said, looks down to the riverfront, and it shows the linkages between the health centre and the other buildings that may be. As Pauline said, these are just artist's impressions of what may be on the site. The inclusion of the pavilion adds functionality to the overall design. It supports well-being and recreation, and placemaking has been at the centre of all of the design considerations to try and make this a place rather than just a collection of different buildings. This will help, this particular area of the park will help to contribute to the overall feel of the site in its entirety. Yeah, next slide, please. And our design team are very aware that we're not doing this in isolation. It's important to understand what else is happening and what's been planned across the area. We've shown just those 3 or 4 sites, number 4 there, Fort George itself, but we're aware of the city deal projects in terms of the Wall City, Central Riverfront, the School of Medicine, and the requirements in terms of student housing. All of those are being considered, and all the developments in Ebrington, etc. We're engaging with SIB to ensure that we're doing this from a collective, collaborative approach. I think the integrated approach strengthens the strategic value of Fort George, enhances the potential of the overall regeneration. And I think at that point, I'll hand over to Wendy.
Thank you. It's just one slide for me. Sorry, next slide, please. It's just to remind members that we had a really useful conversation here last May, just outlining the proposals for the health and care element of the of the site. So we did put the full planning application in July. So it's just to say our ICT design team has been liaising with the planners, read some of the queries and working it through, but we're really just seeing the detail of that now starting to come through. And the outline application going in now for the rest of the site will kind of help inform those conversations too. So it's really just to explain that's where we are, but our aim is that's the building, again, just to remind members, from the Strand Road side. So it's large buildings, about 14,000 square metres, which is like the North Wing in Altnagavin, just to give people an idea. So high quality 4-storey building, and it'll be used to support community services, but also allows to relocate services from Altnagavin as well.
Thanks, Wendy. And just for the last slide, please, just to talk through the programme. Some of the boxes there at the start we've already talked through, but in terms of the third box there, you'll see there our current programme is to have formal submission of the outline planning application in spring of this year. Following that, there'll be a future marketing exercise subject to outline planning approval. The department would be progressing then with the sale to preferred development team, and then reserve matters application by the respective development team would then follow. So that's our presentation finished. I'll pass back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline, for that. I'm going to go straight to comments, and I have 2 indicated speakers, and the first is Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and Pauline, Ian, and Mary. Wendy. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I was at the meeting last May when the Trust was very much to the fore in terms of the presentation around the Health Hub. And I really do welcome the progress that is being made in relation to that planning application. And I think anybody that's watching in terms of our health service, and particularly Alton Calvin, will welcome anything that's going to ease some of the pressure that we have on the hospital at this stage. So it's good to see that progressing. But overall, it's really good to get this presentation here today as well, to see that the overall site is being worked up and there is an outline plan and application, obviously open to market forces and what the market wants to see there. But it is a massive vacant site in our city, and particularly on our riverfront, that we have wanted to see developed and for so long. So it's good and positive to see it moving forward, and it's good to see the mix of possibilities for the site, particularly around health, housing, student accommodation, maybe older people accommodation, bars, restaurants, all those things that might possibly be on site. And it just shows the connectivity and how all these projects that we have been talking about today and last week are all linked together. And I think that it demonstrates that as a city and district, we are so moving in the right direction in terms of where we want to be. We know that we have the City Deal project around the riverfront that is focusing sort of from the council offices up. And then we have this possible riverfront development here at Fort George that will just link that whole up and open up the whole area. And I, as somebody from here and representing the upper end of Culmore, I think that it's a really good opportunity for us. I will say there is challenges around infrastructure. There's challenges around the Strand Road. There is very much challenges around Pennyburn Roundabout, and DFI will have a massive part to play in how we take this forward. So I suppose just a question around DFI engagement in the planning application and where they're sitting with things and how they're progressing and what plans that they have. And it would be good to see bus routes coming in to Fort George as well, I think, because that will open up the site further to people. But it's an opportunity for us to create jobs and look at our housing, tackling the housing need, and then supporting the university expansion. And I said it's linking together a lot of the projects that we have already on the table. So I look forward to that. I know the public engagement around the consultation is ongoing, and I would hope that I know you had an event in the City Hotel, and just asking around some of the engagement, and that was it well attended. Was there any feedback at this stage? Because I know probably one of the things that you hear is around the Strand Road and that traffic issue, and that is one of the things that comes up most to me. Everybody wants to see the site developed. They absolutely do. It's been an eyesore for too long, and the potential that it has is huge. So just around some of the feedback that you have already received, and we certainly will continue to ensure that residents around our city know that the consultation is open to the 19th of February and that they can feed in. But it's really good to see that this is progressing again, Pauline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. We'll go to Councillor Farrell next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Pauline, Ian and Wendy. I too was here last May. I think the entire committee was here. So it's really, really positive, specifically in terms of the Western Trust, that the planning application for the hub has been submitted. And fingers crossed, it gets over the line and we can get it built as soon as possible. So that's great. In terms of the wider Fort George, it is a key strategic site on our riverfront. It has been underutilised. It's been largely vacant for decades. So we want to see it brought back into use. We've had a look at the proposed mix. terms of office, residential, student accommodation, hotel, leisure. That's great. We want to see that site used. It's a fantastic location. But I've got one question about the future development. So there's going to be an outline planning application submitted in the very near future. And there are three sort of distinct areas: Riverfront, Square, Park. And there's three blocks where you're inviting the private sector to invest in those parcels of land. Is there a Stormont budget attached to this? So say, for example, I created a company called Farrell Industries and I wanted one of those plots of land. See, in terms of the public realm, is that funded by the developer or is that DFC? And in terms of, I know part of the application is currently in the system for Workday, the Pennyburn Roundabout. Is there budget for that currently? And in terms of the internal road network? So we've had the previous presentation where we've got great plans for McGee expansion, but it all hinges on budget. Are we going to have a similar issue in the future with Fort George, where we could have planning permission in place, but there's a potential sort of roadblock in terms of Stormont funding to enable that to proceed? But very positive news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Can I welcome the issue of buses? If the team remember when this was last presented, it was an issue that I had referred to, and the potential of buses coming on site is something that I think has to be pursued. I think it's to the benefit of the site and it's to the benefit of those who will use the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. I'm going to go back to Pauline and the team to answer some of those, and then we'll come back to our next batch then, okay? Pauline?
Okay, thank you. So first of all, just coming back to Councillor Duffy's questions, in terms of engagement with DFI, we've been engaging with DFI throughout this process, and as you know, DFI are a key consultee as part of the planning process as well. And the full planning application, which is led by the Trust, includes the Pennyburn Roundabout in terms of the red line. So there was very much a realisation from the start of this project around the significant improvements that would have been needed for the infrastructure. So we engaged with DFI early, and that's part of the reason why the roundabout's included within the red line planning application. In terms of bus routes, for the site itself, we have future-proofed the site. So we've allowed sufficient turning for buses and wide enough roads to allow a bus to come onto the site. But as Ian mentioned there as well, there will also be stops on the Strand Road to allow for bus stoppages as well. But any future decision, as it were, for buses to come onto the site would be up to TransLink. Also, in terms of the engagement event on the 22nd and 23rd of January, roughly around 30 attendees is the feedback that we've got. But also we would welcome just that reference as well to I suppose, outreaching to your communities, and just to, we obviously welcome at this stage further feedback and consultation to come forward. Then just looking to Councillor Farrell's points there. So yes, in terms of future development and investment, so Fort George is a priority for the department. It has been and it will continue to be so. We would wish to take forward delivery of the public realm space along with developers. We do need to work out the detail of that, and that's what we'll be working now over the next number of months whilst the planning application is going through the process. We're going to start a piece of work really focusing on how we market the site and ultimately what we need to invest into the site. The aim is, as we said, to create a site based on good placemaking principles. So for us, that public realm is going to be very, very important. But as you'll appreciate, budgets will be subject to executive agreement. Likewise, for the DFI issue around the roundabout and the Pennyburn roundabout, discussions are ongoing, but ultimately it'll be up to the executive to agree the budget for that as well. Have I missed a question?
So I think Alderman Hussey's point was just around encouraging that public transport and to the site. I don't really think there was a question there. Is that fair? Yep. Yep. Okay. So if we're happy enough, we'll move to our next set of questions. And the first is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for coming in today. And I attended the public consultation and had some very useful conversations with the architects and department members. And look, I think it's great that the Health and Care Centre has an application in and is moving forward. I think that will be a much needed investment and a really good use of the site. I think that's been acknowledged, and I think that centre should help to address the chronic problems that we're facing with the health service. So that's all welcome. A lot of the proposals beyond the multi-storey car park and the health site were, you know, that is a vision that the architects there had kind of created of what could be. And look, the images that were created were extremely impressive. Great use of the riverfront, cafes, community centre, really whatever you kind of would want to see, a lot of green space. And that type of vision was very, very welcome. I mean, so this space has been derelict, or much of it has been derelict for far, far too long. We have a lot of promises that have went unmet. So I think people across the district want to see this site developed fully. And obviously what we were shown in the consultation isn't necessarily what will come to pass. So I think that, you know, when there is more concrete proposals, I think everybody will have more to say about what is possibly going in there or what could be going in there. And I think we want to ensure that it is, I think it'll be more than a 9 to 5 site. It'll be probably, you know, a space that gets used in the evenings. And it will help encourage even more people to use the riverside as well. So that's all. So there's a lot of positive proposals there, great vision. There's a long road to go in terms of the actual plans and then the funding of those plans. And I think that the issue of transport will have to be addressed. Look, we have to kind of put this jigsaw together, and I think that you know what our colleagues have said in here about the need to have work this into a transport plan is very, very important. But look, the designs were very impressive, and I think that I look forward to kind of seeing this actioned and developed further.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Jackson.
Good, Chair, and like others, just welcome everybody into the chamber today. Just get Pauline in particular, you know, are all too aware of the value that our community sector and the role that they play within our city and district. And one of the there's huge opportunities coming about as a result of all the investment that we've been discussing last week at the earlier presentation, and there's massive potential in relation to Fort George. It's another big piece of the jigsaw that we've been discussing. But has there been any engagement with the Community Wealth Building Partnership around what role they may have, if any, in the development of Fort George? Is there any interest? Because you know what we don't want to see is investors coming into the city and extracting profit. So we want if there's opportunities available, they retain profits within our council area. They support organisations. They bring forward applications, and most importantly, when we're moving forward with the vast swathe of capital bills, that social values are incorporated in the central to all the procurement contracts. So it would just a query is in relation to the engagement piece. Will there be conversations taking place with our local community wealth building partnership. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Mooney?
Thank you, Chair, for bringing me in, and just to again welcome the speakers in today, and obviously the contributions. Welcome the trust; they are there. You know, the full application has been lodged for the health unit down here, and also the fact as well is that the DFC are committing the outline planning permission. They try and put out the rest of the site. Interestingly, we attended a meeting yesterday about the other parts of the city deal programming and what that would look like, and obviously what's in your brochure shows very clearly that it ties in with what the vision would be to link up that entire waterfront, and that's a tick heart in seeing that as well. But probably my question is we were sitting here and you're saying that that's the vision, and you're obviously the planning permissions you're seeking is for a broad swathe of things, but I suppose a yes no answer would suffice. But have you had any expressions of interest from anybody about the plots? Obviously a yes or no, because I can understand the commercial sensitivity. You wouldn't want to talk about it, but that's what I was just looking to find out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. I'm going to go to Alderman Kerrigan as our final speaker online, and then I'll allow Pauline and the team.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in, and I do thank Pauline and the others there with her for the presentation provided there. Apologies, I wasn't at that update. I know some of my colleagues were at it, but I wasn't able to attend that one. That was a recent update in regards to it. But it's good to see the artist's impression there of what we're looking at. You've touched on the points such as the traffic, and how that is going to be worked with, the Pennyburn roundabout, and again, the working with the Northwest Transport Plan, important aspects, and the bus stops, and so those things are there. And so, no, it's good to see progress, good to see it moving forward, and no real challenge, just to welcome the report and thanks for coming in. And whether you need it or not, Chair, or whether it is, I don't know if we need declarations of interest in regards to membership of the planning committee or not, but as I say, if you want it, it's there. If you don't, it's all right. But other than that, Chair, thank you very much for allowing me in.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. And before we get an influx of people declaring an interest because we're on the planning committee, I have checked in advance with our chief executive and we don't need one, but thank you anyway, Alderman Kerrigan. So that's the final speaker on that deputation. I'm going to hand back to Pauline and her team to take on some of those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody, first of all, for the positive comments. In terms of some of the questions there around the engagement with the community and the social value aspect. So as part of the work that we'll be doing now in terms of planning for marketing of the site, we will be looking specifically at social value clauses as part of that. And we'll certainly want to, engage around community wealth building. So we'll certainly be following up on that now over the coming months. Also, in relation to expressions of interest, it's been many years since there had been an expression of interest exercise for Fort George. And as you've rightly said, I wouldn't be able to go into it as part of today's discussion, but we would intend to go out again as part of that marketing exercise that we're talking about there. So that's in the next stage, and certainly over the next number of months, whilst the outline planning is submitted, there will be work going on within the department to look at that in more detail and to progress that further.
Brilliant. Look, Pauline, Ian, and Wendy, thank you all very much for your attendance here today. I think it's clear that there's broad support from the council on the plans for Fort George, and anything that we can do, we certainly will. But thank you very much all for your attendance today. Thank you. Members, it's now 6:15. We'll take 5 minutes just as a comfort break for people. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll kick off again. And just before we do, Alderman Kerrigan has declared an interest in item number 14, Paula. Item 7 is chairperson's business, and there is none. So we'll take on item number 8 is the minutes from the open meeting of Governance and Strategic Planning Committee held on Tuesday, the 6th of January. For accuracy. Everybody's shaking their head. I need a proposer and seconder. Right. Thanks, John.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry.
Item number 9 is Alfie to take us through the Q3 financial outturn. Alfie.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report, members, is for you to consider and approve our 9-month financial outturn and position at 31st of December. The report just sets out the background of the 81.85 million budget that we have for the year, and it's obviously important that you're provided with regular financial updates on performance against that budget to identify any financial issues or pressures. So, members, there's a detailed draft outturn report in the appendix to the report, and that's summarised in the table in section 3.1 of the report. So you'll note that we're currently forecasting a very small 9k surplus position, in essence, members, broadly a break-even position, and that's made up of 4 key elements. So element 1, we've labelled services, and there's a reported underspend there of 526k. As noted in the report, members, that's mainly driven by income being ahead of budget, and the big one within that is leisure income, which is due to obviously the increased usage across our Tier 1 sites, as well as the VAT savings that we're now realising. Also, members, museums, due to the Derry Girls exhibition and Guildhall bookings, and building control and planning and environmental health are also ahead of budget at this point. Against that, members, the key service pressure relates to a number of commitments and additional costs which are associated with those additional income receipts. So the leisure surplus, for example, it's been agreed that that would be, the VAT element of that has been transferred to our capital fund towards our strategic leisure projects. And 850k has also been transferred to our capital fund towards a number of commitments that were agreed through the capital working group earlier in the year. The additional income generated in the Guildhall and Tower Museum has also resulted in increased numbers using these facilities, therefore requiring additional staffing costs. The second key element, members, capital other costs is labelled. The key issue there is obviously investment interest is well ahead of budget due to the sums we have associated with our capital fund, which are in long-term deposit. You'll know, members, that given the significance of the 2 strategic leisure projects and the borrowing requirements, we've agreed that any associated investment income surpluses would be transferred to our capital fund, again building up provision towards those significant strategic leisure aspirations. The third issue, members, rates income. Unfortunately, we're in a deficit here for the first time in a long time, 197k. On the domestic front, it's positive. We have a 445k positive variance, but that's been offset by a 642k negative variance in respect of non-domestic rating income. You'll probably note that during the rates process, that was pointed out and results totally from revaluation appeals, which at this point, since the 1st of April 2023, members have resulted in us losing over 3 million of recurrent rates income. So that's obviously a challenge to keep our rate base stagnant. But thankfully, members, we do retain funds within our financial contingency reserve moving forward to mitigate that. But it's a risk we need to keep very close eye on moving forward. And the final area, members, is grant income reserves. There's an overspend there, basically due to our district fund reserves reduction strategy. You'll be aware that we plan to use 900k from that fund this year to fund our service expenditure, and as a result of the rates process this year, we're planning to, I suppose, not utilise that in as much as we can. So the overspend there results from ring fencing those savings towards that district fund reduction strategy. So members, that's the key issue. As stated at the start of the report, effectively a break-even position. Our service budgets continue to be well controlled and monitored, but these have been offset by a number of pressures and commitments as outlined in the report. So it's recommended that you approve the Q3 financial outturn position, and also members in the appendix, there's prudential and treasury management indicators that we need to monitor and report on a quarterly basis also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alfie. First indicated speakers, Councillor Jackson.
Yep, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alfie, for the report and the very detailed report. And I suppose it highlights the volatility, particularly within our rate space and our service income. And I want to commend everybody involved in driving that service income up, because I know none of it has happened by accident. There's a lot of work goes on, particularly from our leisure staff, and it gets rehearsed right across different council committees. But it has offset some of the significant challenges that we're facing from a financial perspective. The report outlines our huge ambitions and the challenges that we face in relation to funding our ambitious capital programme. And from our perspective, we're fully committed to delivering for the people of our city and district. And on that basis, I'm content to propose the recommendation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and happy to second the proposal, but just one query on the reval challenges or appeals. Those are obviously, I'm imagining those are obviously not to do with reval 26, but to do with reval 23. Is that correct? That's grand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Just from our basis, just to endorse the report, and of course we'll be supporting the recommendation from Alfie. When we normally see these reports, there's normally the surplus is a lot larger, but obviously reading the report, and you can look at it, that there has been pressures. And again, hats off to our finance team and to the executive officers who look after the side of the budget in the council. It's clearly a demanding last quarter, and we in the SLP will be supporting the recommendation and the obviously firm support for the officers in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. I have no further indicated speakers. The report has been proposed by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Alderman Hussey. Assuming everybody's in agreement. Yep. Okay. We'll move on to item 10 as an update on the Public Transport Task Force, and that's Karen to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to update members on the most recent meeting of the Public Transport Task Force and to consider a request from the Task Force for Council to write to the DFI Minister asking for an update in relation to the business case for increased rail services between Derry and Belfast. Members, you'll recall the notice of motion in 2023 to set up the Public Transport Task Force, inviting DFI, Translink officials and other relevant stakeholders to update members in relation to the operation of public transport in the city and district and consider potential and planned improvements to bus and rail. Members, the task force met at the end of September and heard updates on the North West Transport Plan and from Translink on the operation of current services and on proposed improvement to bus and rail services. And members, the notes of the meeting with the presentation given by Translink is attached to your pack today. During the meeting, members of the task force discussed proposals to increase rail services between Derry and Belfast, and the Translink officials advised that they had submitted a business case to DFI relating to an additional early morning and later evening train service between Derry and Belfast, and for an early Sunday service
in 2020. The members of the task force requested that Council write to the DFI Minister seeking an update on progress in relation to the business case. Members, therefore, we're asking you today to consider the request from the Public Transport Task Force, and just to advise members that we have put into the diary a further task force meeting in the middle of March, and hopefully members will be able to attend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. First indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for the report. And it was in September, and I believe that month we passed collectively a motion at Council calling on the Infrastructure Minister to provide the funding that Council has already called on to address rail disparity on the Derry to Belfast line. I think we got some responses back to the effect of we are looking at it and we're open to it, but we haven't had any decision made again. So I fully support the proposal, and that we write to them collectively from this committee, which will be ratified at the full council meeting. And hopefully when that letter is received by the minister, we'll get a firmer response that actually says we will provide the £1 million or so that is needed. The TransLink have told us is needed for them to address the timetable disparity. Obviously, this has been something that campaigners, particularly into the West, but many others have been pushing for a long time, and in many ways been the leading on the issue. So I think we have to keep making the case to the minister that Derry is worthy of services that exist east of the Ban. So happy to kind of make that proposal or back that recommendation coming from the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Karen, for the report. And just to second Councillor Harkin's proposal, I think everybody agrees that there needs to be investment in the rail infrastructure in the Northwest. We need to see faster and more frequent journeys. And I note that TransLink submitted a revised business case to the Minister for those more frequent services in September 2025. As yet, I'm unsure whether a decision has been made, but if this paper is before us, it suggests it hasn't. So we would support writing to the Minister, asking for clarity, asking for certainty, because we do need that investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor McGinley.
Chair, we're content to support the proposal for the letter to go through. I know that from meetings of the Northwest Regional Development Group with the Minister, that she has demonstrated her commitment to the Northwest and to tackling that regional imbalance. So we would look forward to having a response to the letter. So happy enough that to go forward.
Okay, thank you, members. Proposed by Councillor Harkin, seconded by Councillor Farrell. But from what I'm hearing, everybody's in agreement. Happy enough? Okay, members, item 11 to 14 are open for information, and I plan to take them as read unless anyone wants to raise anything. Alderman Hussey.
Item 12, deputations, Chair. Members have heard me on about this before, but I mean, today is probably a very extreme example of deputations and the length of time they can take. If you look at the time, our committee meeting is supposed to start at 4 o'clock. The actual meeting that we are dealing with, the stuff that we're dealing with as a committee, it's a couple of hours later, we're not. And I feel that officers need to look at options for dealing with deputations. Further, the permission for a deputation to come into committee is via the chair, as far as I know. And we don't know how the incoming chair for next year will take deputations coming to committee. So, those are things that need to be taken on board going forward, and other committees as well, whether they accept, the chair is prepared to accept a deputation coming to his or her committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey, your points are noted. One thing that I would say is I'm very good at timekeeping, and the committee did start at 4 o'clock. I think both of the deputations who were present today were very deliberately and required to come together because it shows the development aspirations of not only the council, but other bodies outside. And I think, you know, if they had have been separated and spread over 2 committee meetings, I think the detail in some of those would have been lost. But your points are noted. Members, any further points on matters for information? No? Okay. Can I get a proposer and a seconder to go on the confidential? Councillor McDade and Alderman Hussey. Thank you. And item number 15, members. Are we on confidential? I always forget they would.